Ethan sank into his bed, hoping the hum of the colony's life support systems would lull him into sleep. The day had been long and exhausting. The power generator had gone down in Sector 7, leaving the colony without light and heat for several hours. As the chief engineer, he had spent the past 12 hours crawling through narrow maintenance tunnels, checking circuits, and reconfiguring the main energy conduit. His muscles ached, and his mind was numb from constant calculations. At last he thought he could rest. He rolled onto his side, letting his eyes drift closed. Outside, the colony's lights dimmed with the evening cycle, and the soft glow of distant planets painted the sky in muted blues and greens. The small room felt safe, almost ordinary, and for a moment Ethan allowed himself to imagine normalcy. For a human born on a distant world, normalcy was rare. Everything here reminded him of human. Resilience and adaptability, how humans could carve life from harsh planets and make homes in places no other species could survive. He was just about to drift off when he heard a faint, soft noise. At first he thought it was the settling of the walls or the gentle hum of machinery, but the noise repeated, a barely audible shuffle from the edge of his bed. His eyes snapped open. A small figure was climbing onto his bed. Ethan froze. At first he thought he was dreaming. The figure was no human. She was small, perhaps a child, but not human. Her skin shimmered faintly under the dim light, and her silver hair glowed slightly, reflecting the soft light of the colony's systems. Her eyes, large and round, shone with an otherworldly blue that seemed to pierce the darkness. Ethan's first instinct was shock, followed immediately by alarm. Who or what was this? His mind raced. Aliens were rare visitors to human colonies, and one appearing inside a private sleeping quarter was unheard of. Before he could even speak, she looked up at him with wide eyes, trembling slightly. Fear, he realized, had drawn her here. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't hostile. She was scared. Ethan sat up slowly, careful not to startle her. "Hey, it's okay," he said, keeping his voice low and calm. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't respond, but her eyes softened, a tiny flicker of relief crossing her face. She pointed to herself, then to him, and then made a small questioning sound. Ethan frowned. Clearly, language was a barrier. He had no idea what she was saying. He leaned back against the wall, giving her space. "All right, we'll figure this out." His eyes scanned the room. The door was secure. No one had entered while he slept. How had she gotten in? Questions piled up in his mind, but he pushed them aside. The immediate concern was her. The girl, after a moment, curled up at the foot of the bed, hugging her knees to her chest. She shivered slightly. Ethan realized that beyond fear, she must also be cold. His quarters were warm, but perhaps not enough for someone from another world. He hesitated, unsure how to act. Normally, humans would put a blanket around someone to comfort them, but this was an alien child, or at least she looked like a child. What would she think of human behavior? Would she understand? Ethan grabbed an extra blanket from the side of the bed and draped it over her small frame. She looked up at him again, eyes wide with surprise, and then pressed herself into the warmth. The gesture was simple, but it was the first acknowledgement of trust. He felt a strange sense of connection, even though they had not exchanged a single word. For a long while, they just stayed there. Ethan watched her, noting the subtle glow of her skin and the way her hair seemed to catch the light. He wondered about her home. What world had she come from? Was she lost, or was this intentional? He had read reports of alien refugees, of those fleeing interstellar conflicts, but this was the first time he had seen one in person. And here she was in his bed with no warning at all. Finally, he spoke again, keeping his voice soft. "I need to know your name. Can you tell me?" She tilted her head, thinking, then made another sound. It was almost musical, a trill that seemed to vibrate in the air. Ethan frowned. "I don't understand." "I'll call you Lyria," he said finally. The name felt right, though he had no idea if it would be accepted. The girl's eyes widened slightly at the sound, and she repeated it back in her own way, the trill turning into something closer to speech. It was not perfect, but it was enough to establish the first bridge between them. The hours passed slowly. Ethan tried to sleep again, but his mind refused. He kept glancing at Lyria, who had now fallen asleep, curled up peacefully under the blanket. He marveled at how alien and human-like she seemed at the same time. Her breathing was soft and even, yet there was an energy about her that felt almost alive in a way humans could not replicate. He had dealt with machines that mimicked life, but this was different. She was alive in the purest sense, yet not human. Eventually, fatigue claimed him again, and he drifted off into a light, uneasy sleep, always aware of her presence at the foot of the bed. When morning came, the colony was buzzing with activity. Ethan had hoped to sneak Lyria out quietly, but she woke before he did. She climbed onto his chest, suddenly startling him awake. Her eyes gleamed with curiosity, not fear this time. Ethan laughed quietly, the tension of the previous night easing slightly. "You're lucky I like surprises," he said. He gently nudged her to the side so he could sit up. She responded with a small, happy trill, the closest thing to laughter she had made so far. Ethan dressed quickly, knowing the colony would soon be alive with people. He didn't know how he would hide Lyria, but he knew he had to try. There was no question now. She was here for a reason, and he was the only one she trusted. They moved carefully through the hallways, Ethan explaining the basics of colony life through gestures. Lyria watched everything with wide eyes, fascinated by the technology, the human routines, and the quiet hum of life support systems. She pointed at certain machines, her trill rising in pitch. Ethan interpreted it as curiosity. "That's a reactor panel," he said. "It keeps the colony alive." Her eyes widened even further, and she reached out a small hand. Ethan allowed her to touch the panel. She didn't disrupt anything. Instead, she seemed to sense the flow of energy, her fingers glowing faintly as she traced the lines. Ethan gasped slightly. She could manipulate energy, or at least perceive it in ways humans couldn't. That explained her sudden appearance last night. She must have detected the warmth and energy of his room and found it safe. The morning passed in a blur of observation and quiet movement. Ethan knew that keeping her hidden in his quarters was no longer safe. The colony security was tight, and any unexplained energy signature would attract attention. They needed a plan. He guided Lyria to the maintenance tunnels, a place humans rarely frequented unless on duty. She followed obediently, her trust in him absolute. In the tunnels, they paused. Lyria traced the walls with her hands, leaving faint glowing streaks that shimmered briefly before fading. Ethan stared. "You're amazing," he whispered. She tilted her head, a tiny smile forming. He realized that humans were rare in the galaxy for many reasons, but courage and empathy were traits that could inspire trust across species, and somehow she had chosen to trust him. The day ended with more questions than answers. Who was Lyria running from? Why did she come to a human colony? And what would happen if they were discovered? Ethan knew that hiding her was only the beginning. Protecting her would require every ounce of ingenuity, courage, and human resilience he could muster. As night fell, they returned to his quarters. Ethan set up a small space for her, separate from his bed but warm and safe. Lyria sat quietly observing him as he prepared for sleep. He could feel her energy watching him, almost as if she were trying to understand him completely in a single glance. He lay down, exhausted once more, but this time, he did not try to force sleep. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, thinking about the journey ahead. Protecting an alien child in a human colony would not be easy, but somehow he knew he was ready. Humanity had survived on countless worlds, overcoming impossible odds. If anyone could keep her safe, it was a human. The last thing he felt before sleep finally claimed him was a small hand brushing against his arm, a gesture of trust that spoke louder than any words could. In the silent hum of the colony, Ethan realized that his life had changed forever. Somewhere in the galaxy, a small alien girl had decided that he was worth trusting, and that trust was something humans, for all their flaws, had a unique gift to inspire. Outside, the stars glittered, distant and cold, but inside the quarters, a fragile warmth began to grow. Ethan did not know what awaited them, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hope. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the colony, unseen eyes were watching, tracking the energy of the small silver-haired girl. The journey had just begun, and danger was closer than he imagined. But for now, Ethan closed his eyes, letting the quiet bond between human and alien settle over him like a soft blanket, ready to face whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. The next morning, Ethan awoke to the quiet rustle of movement near the edge of his room. Lyria was already awake, Her large blue eyes focused on the small panels and screens he used for monitoring colony systems. She had been studying them all night, tracing lines and lights with her fingers, her soft glow pulsing faintly as if absorbing the energy around her. Ethan rubbed his eyes and tried to stretch the stiffness from his muscles. The events of the previous night felt like a dream, yet the presence of Lyria, now awake and curious, reminded him it was all too real. He sat up and watched her, wondering what this alien child was thinking. She seemed fascinated by everything human, especially the technology that kept the colony alive. "Morning," Ethan said quietly. Careful not to startle her, she turned toward him, her eyes blinking rapidly, the glow softening as if responding to his voice. She tilted her head and let out a series of musical trills. Ethan smiled. He was beginning to recognize patterns in her sounds. Some were questions, some were exclamations, and a few were simply expressions of joy or curiosity. "All right," he said. "I think we need to figure out how to talk to each other better." He stood and stretched again, then gestured toward a small table where he kept paper, markers, and basic tools. "Let's start with simple words. I'll show you a picture and you tell me what you think it is." Lyria watched him carefully, her glowing fingers hovering just above the table. When he drew a simple circle representing a light source, she pointed at it and then at herself, tilting her head as if asking whether she could create it. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. "You can manipulate energy?" he whispered. The glow of her fingertips pulsed gently, almost as if confirming his thought. He quickly grabbed a notebook and began documenting her abilities. Lyria's energy manipulation was subtle but precise. She could sense energy flow and even move small amounts enough to illuminate a panel or trace a circuit line. It was unlike any human ability, but it reminded him of certain advanced alien technologies he had read about in classified reports. The morning passed with a mixture of careful communication exercises and observation. Ethan used gestures, drawings, and simple symbols to teach Lyria human words. In return, she began showing him small tricks, like lighting a panel without touching it directly or sensing where the power lines ran beneath the walls. Ethan was amazed. She was not only intelligent but also incredibly perceptive. By midday, they had developed a rudimentary understanding of each other. Lyria could recognize basic human words, and Ethan was starting to interpret her trills and gestures with more accuracy. The bond between them deepened, not just through necessity but through genuine curiosity and trust. Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in years: the excitement of discovery, of encountering intelligence that was both alien and profoundly capable. But the colony was waking up. Patrol drones hummed softly through the corridors, scanning for unusual energy signatures. Ethan knew they had limited time before someone noticed the faint traces Lyria left behind. He decided to move her to a safer place. He led Lyria to the maintenance tunnels, explaining through gestures and simple words that it was safer there. She followed obediently, her small hand occasionally brushing against his, a silent reassurance that she trusted him completely. The tunnels were quiet, lit only by dim emergency lights, and the hum of machinery provided a steady background sound. Here, Lyria could experiment without fear of being discovered. Once they were in a secure corner, Ethan set up a small workspace. Using scraps of metal, wiring, and old control panels, he created a makeshift station where Lyria could safely test her abilities. She was fascinated. She moved her hands over the circuits, and small sparks of energy followed her fingers, lighting up the panels in patterns that were beautiful and complex. Ethan watched, awestruck, realizing that humans might be the only species capable of inspiring such trust in her. Humans. "Brave," Ethan said slowly, unsure if she would understand the words yet. Lyria tilted her head, then looked at him with wide eyes as if sensing the meaning behind his words rather than the words themselves. Ethan smiled. She was learning not just language, but the human way of thinking: curiosity, caution, and empathy all in one. Hours passed as Ethan taught her more about human life, and Lyria showed him more of her abilities. She could sense weak spots in structures, almost like detecting cracks in walls or faults in machines before they became dangerous. She could read subtle energy patterns, predicting when a power conduit might fail or when a system was about to overheat. Ethan realized that if humans and Lyria's species could combine their knowledge, they could achieve incredible things. But there was little time to dwell on possibilities. A soft alarm echoed through the colony, signaling a routine security sweep. Ethan froze. He knew that if the drones detected Lyria's unique energy signature, there would be questions, many questions. They had to act fast. "Stay close," Ethan whispered, gripping her small hand. Together, they moved deeper into the tunnels, taking careful turns and using hidden side passages to avoid detection. Lyria's glow pulsed gently, and Ethan realized she was frightened. He spoke softly to calm her, explaining through gestures that everything would be fine. Somehow she understood. They paused in a junction of maintenance corridors where old storage crates created a small hiding space. Lyria crouched behind a stack of containers, her eyes shining in the dim light. Ethan scanned the corridor. The security drones passed by, their mechanical eyes scanning for unusual heat or energy. Each second felt like an eternity, but the drones moved on, oblivious to the small alien presence in the shadows. After the sweep, Ethan let out a quiet sigh of relief. "We're okay for now," he said. Lyria emerged from her hiding spot, brushing herself off. She trilled softly, a sound that Ethan had begun to recognize as amusement or relief. He laughed quietly. Somehow, despite the danger, she made the day feel lighter, more alive. They continued to move through the colony cautiously, avoiding main corridors and populated areas. Ethan was teaching her about human technology, showing her the difference between life support systems, energy conduits, and communication panels. Lyria responded with fascination, her small hands reaching out to touch each device, glowing faintly as she sensed the energy flow. Ethan marveled at her intelligence. She was learning faster than he could teach. By evening, they found a quiet storage area on the outskirts of the colony. Ethan decided to settle Lyria there temporarily while he formulated a plan. She explored the room curiously, touching crates, old equipment, and discarded machinery. She seemed fascinated by everything, even the simplest objects. Ethan sat against a crate, watching her. "You know," he said softly, "humans aren't perfect. We make mistakes, but somehow we survive. We adapt, and you trust me. That's rare, even for humans." Lyria paused, looking at him with eyes that seemed to understand more than he said. She reached out, lightly touching his arm, a small gesture that conveyed more than words could. Night fell, and the colony quieted again. Ethan had prepared a small sleeping area for Lyria, separated from his own bed but warm and safe. She settled there, glowing softly, and Ethan realized he had grown used to her presence. There was a strange comfort in having someone who relied on him completely, someone who believed in human courage without hesitation. As he lay down, Ethan's thoughts wandered. Lyria was not just an alien visitor. She was a reminder of why humans mattered in the galaxy, their bravery, their empathy, and their ability to inspire trust across worlds. He knew that keeping her safe would not be easy. There would be challenges, questions, and dangers beyond anything he had faced before, but he was ready. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the colony, unseen sensors were picking up faint energy signatures. Lyria's presence had not gone entirely unnoticed. Ethan did not yet know who was tracking her, but he understood that their journey had only just begun. The galaxy was vast and danger lurked in ways humans rarely imagined. But for now, in the quiet of the storage room, human and alien rested side by side. Ethan drifted into sleep with a sense of purpose and connection he had not felt in years. Lyria's gentle glow lit the room, a small beacon of hope in the vast uncertainty of space. And though tomorrow would bring new challenges, today had proven something extraordinary, that even across species, trust and courage could form a bond stronger than fear or danger. The stars outside the colony window shimmered faintly, distant and cold, but within the storage room, warmth and understanding had taken root. Ethan knew that their story was only beginning, and that together, they could face whatever the galaxy held. As the night deepened, he felt a quiet certainty. The presence of a human could inspire courage even in the smallest, most alien of beings, and in return, the alien's trust gave him a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had a place in the galaxy, not just as survivors, but as allies, protectors, and friends. Tomorrow they would face new challenges. But tonight they had each other, and that was enough. The following day, Ethan woke to the soft hum of the colony beginning its daily routines. He opened his eyes and found Lyria already awake, sitting cross-legged in her small corner, observing the flickering lights of the nearby panels. Her glow pulsed faintly, reflecting her curiosity and energy. She seemed more confident now, moving with a grace that was both alien and captivating. Ethan stretched and rubbed his eyes. He had barely slept, his mind filled with questions about her abilities, her origins, and the dangers that might be approaching. But seeing her so calm, so unafraid, reminded him why he had chosen to protect her. Humanity had survived countless threats because of its courage, intelligence, and empathy. And now, that very courage was being tested in a completely new way. "Good morning," he said softly, careful not to startle her. Lyria tilted her head, blinking, and let out a series of trills. Ethan smiled faintly. He was beginning to recognize her patterns of speech more clearly. Some sounds were questions, some were statements, and some, like these, seemed to be greetings. He responded with a small hand gesture, pointing to himself and saying, "Ethan," then pointing to her and saying, "Lyria." She repeated her trill, sounding closer to the name he had given her. Ethan stood and grabbed a small toolkit from the storage crate. "We need to keep practicing. Today I want to show you more about human tools, and maybe you can show me more about your abilities." Lyria's eyes brightened at this. She jumped lightly to her feet and followed him as he led her to the maintenance workspace. The walls were lined with panels, wires, and small circuits that humans used to monitor and repair the colony's systems. Ethan handed her a small panel and watched closely. "Try this," he said. "Don't break it." She touched the panel lightly, her glow interacting with the circuits. Lights flickered on and off in response to her touch, and Ethan realized that she was not just sensing energy but subtly manipulating it. Her small fingers moved over the wires with precision, tracing patterns that Ethan had never thought possible. "You're amazing," he whispered, a sense of wonder washing over him. She looked up, her large eyes reflecting both curiosity and pride. For the first time, Ethan felt something unusual, a true partnership. Humans had survived in the galaxy because of their ingenuity, but he realized that with Lyria's abilities, they could achieve far more than either could alone. They spent the morning exploring this new dynamic. Ethan showed her simple mechanical tasks like connecting circuits or tightening screws, while Lyria demonstrated how she could sense energy flows and even predict when a system might fail. Her understanding of energy was intuitive, almost magical, yet precise. Ethan noted everything carefully, writing in his notebook. He had never seen anything like it, and he knew that if the wrong people discovered her, it could lead to catastrophic consequences. By midday, Ethan decided they needed to venture outside his quarters. The colony was too busy with its daily routines for them to remain hidden indefinitely. He led Lyria through narrow corridors, avoiding main traffic areas. She followed closely, her small hand occasionally brushing his, a silent reassurance that she trusted him completely. As they moved, Lyria paused near a window, her eyes widening at the sight of the colony's central plaza below. Humans and robots moved about in a synchronized rhythm, maintaining order and life within the settlement. She pointed at the people and then at Ethan, her trill rising in pitch. He guessed she was asking about them. "These are humans," he said slowly. "Like me. They work, they live, they survive." She blinked, absorbing the information, then reached out and lightly touched the glass. Ethan felt a faint pulse of energy pass through the wall, as if she were sensing life itself. They continued through the colony until they reached a storage area at the edge of the settlement. Here they could experiment and move without fear of discovery. Ethan handed her more tools and allowed her to interact freely with the panels and circuits. Lyria's confidence grew. She manipulated energy with greater skill, even combining small flows to power panels without touching them physically. Ethan's jaw dropped. He realized that her abilities could be more than just a tool. They could be a form of protection, a way to evade danger or even defend herself if necessary. Hours passed, and the bond between them strengthened. Lyria began imitating Ethan's movements, learning human gestures and even attempting to speak his language in small phrases. Ethan responded patiently, encouraging her attempts, marveling at her rapid learning. Humans were known for adaptability, but seeing it reflected in a different species combined with her own unique abilities left him both awed and humbled. Suddenly, a faint alarm echoed through the colony. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Security drones were scanning for unusual energy signatures, and Lyria's glow might have been detected. He grabbed her hand and whispered urgently, "We need to hide. Now." They darted through the storage area, weaving between crates and machinery. Ethan's mind raced, calculating every possible route to avoid detection. Lyria's glow dimmed slightly as she sensed his urgency. Together they moved like shadows, avoiding the drone's sensors. Each step was tense, each breath measured. Finally, they reached a narrow side corridor that led to an unused maintenance hatch. Ethan pulled it open and they slipped inside. The space was cramped and dark, but it was safe for now. Lyria's small body pressed against him instinctively, and Ethan felt a surge of protective instinct. He had trained for emergencies and malfunctions, but nothing had prepared him for protecting a living, thinking alien being. They stayed hidden for several tense minutes until the drones passed. Ethan checked the corridor carefully before allowing Lyria to move. "We're safe," he said softly. She trilled in response, a sound that conveyed relief and perhaps amusement. Ethan laughed quietly. Somehow, even in danger, her presence made the day feel lighter. As evening approached, Ethan realized they needed a more permanent solution. Lyria could not remain hidden in random storage areas indefinitely. He led her to an abandoned workshop on the outskirts of the colony, a place humans rarely visited. The space was filled with old machinery, spare parts, and panels that had long been decommissioned. Here they could experiment safely, learn more about each other, and prepare for whatever challenges lay ahead. Ethan set up a small workstation for Lyria, using panels and circuits to create a controlled environment. She moved with purpose, her fingers glowing as she interacted with the equipment. Ethan watched in awe. She was learning human ways while simultaneously teaching him about alien energy manipulation. It was a partnership unlike anything he had ever experienced. As night fell, Ethan prepared a small sleeping area for Lyria. She curled up, her glow dimming to a soft shimmer, and Ethan lay down nearby. The quiet of the workshop was comforting, but Ethan knew that danger was never far away. Somewhere, someone or something was tracking alien energy signatures. He did not know when they would be discovered, only that they had to be ready. Ethan's mind wandered as he stared at the ceiling. Humanity had survived in countless worlds because of courage, ingenuity, and trust. Now those same qualities were being tested in a new way. Protecting Lyria would require every ounce of skill and resourcefulness he had, yet in her trust he found a renewed sense of purpose. Humans had always thrived against the odds, and he knew that together, they could face whatever the galaxy threw at them. Hours passed, and sleep finally claimed him. Even in slumber, he remained alert to her presence, sensing the rhythm of her breathing and the faint glow that pulsed gently in the darkness. It was a reminder that life, no matter how different, was precious and that the bond between beings could transcend species, language, and worlds. The stars outside the workshop window shimmered faintly, distant and cold, but within, warmth and understanding had taken root. Ethan knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and perhaps danger. But he also knew that humanity's courage could inspire trust, and that even in the vast, unpredictable galaxy, hope could be found in the most unexpected places. As he drifted deeper into sleep, Ethan felt a quiet certainty. Lyria had chosen to trust him, and that trust was something humans had a rare gift for inspiring. In return, her abilities, her perspective, and her courage would challenge him to grow, to adapt, and to see the universe in ways he had never imagined. Tomorrow, they would face tests they could not yet foresee, but tonight they had each other, and that, Ethan realized, was more powerful than any danger, more enlightening than any discovery. It was a reminder that humanity's strength lay not only in survival but in connection, empathy, and the courage to protect others, no matter how alien they might be. And somewhere beyond the distant colony walls, faint sensors traced unusual energy signatures, alerting unseen observers to the presence of the silver-haired child. Ethan did not yet know who was watching, but he understood that their journey was only beginning. Danger was coming, and it would test everything he had ever known about human courage and trust. For now, though in the quiet of the abandoned workshop, human and alien rested side by side, a fragile bond of understanding and hope growing stronger with every passing hour. And as the stars outside glimmered, Ethan realized that even in the vastness of space, humanity could shine, through courage, ingenuity, and the trust it inspired in others. The following morning, Ethan woke to a faint glow illuminating the corners of the abandoned workshop. Lyria was already awake, moving silently among the scattered panels and circuits. Her silver hair shimmered softly in the dim light, and her large blue eyes glimmered with a mixture of curiosity and focus. She had grown more confident since the day Ethan had found her, her abilities becoming sharper and more precise with each passing hour. Ethan stretched, rubbing the stiffness from his muscles. He had spent little time sleeping in the past days, his mind constantly calculating how to keep Lyria safe. The colony security system was sophisticated, and any unusual energy signature, no matter how subtle, could attract attention. He knew that the longer Lyria stayed in the colony, the higher the risk of detection. "Good morning," Ethan said softly, careful not to startle her. Lyria turned toward him, tilting her head as if responding with her own greeting. She let out a small trill that seemed almost like laughter. Ethan smiled faintly. Their communication had grown beyond words. Small gestures, expressions, and sounds carried meaning between them. She understood more of him than he realized, and he was slowly understanding her. Today they needed a plan. Lyria could not remain hidden in the workshop indefinitely. Ethan had considered moving her to a safer location outside the colony, but that required careful planning. The colony was alive with activity, and patrols scanned even the less frequented areas. One wrong move and they could be discovered. "Come," he said, gesturing for her to follow him. Together they slipped through a narrow maintenance corridor, careful to avoid main traffic. Lyria's glow dimmed slightly as if sensing his caution. Ethan led her to a storage tunnel on the colony's outskirts. This area was rarely used, filled with old crates, machinery, and abandoned supplies. It was far from perfect, but it offered temporary safety. Ethan knelt and set up a small table, placing a few panels and circuits in front of Lyria. "We need to practice," he said. "If security comes close, you'll need to know how to protect yourself." Her eyes widened slightly at the words, and she tilted her head. Ethan realized that while she understood trust and cooperation, the concept of danger was new to her. He needed to teach her quickly. For hours they worked together. Ethan guided her hands over panels, showing her how small energy surges could illuminate circuits or create minor disruptions in the colony's systems. Lyria's glow pulsed with excitement as she learned, her confidence growing with each success. She was not only intelligent but highly perceptive, quickly understanding the cause and effect of her actions. Ethan observed closely, making notes in his notebook. He realized that Lyria's abilities could be more than just curiosity or instinct. With proper control, she could manipulate energy to mislead patrols, create small diversions, or even protect herself and him from danger. The thought was both exhilarating and frightening. They were playing with powers far beyond normal human experience, and one mistake could draw attention from the colony authorities, or worse. Midday arrived, and the colony's activity increased. Patrol drones hummed through the corridors, scanning for anomalies. Ethan knew that Lyria's presence was increasingly risky. He took a deep breath and said, "We need to move. It's no longer safe here." Lyria's eyes widened and she tilted her head, clearly sensing the urgency. Ethan guided her through the tunnels, using hidden passages and maintenance hatches to avoid detection. Each step required careful calculation. The drone's sensors were sensitive, and any energy signature out of place could trigger an alarm. As they moved, Lyria's abilities became invaluable. She could sense the drone's energy fields before they came into view, allowing them to duck into shadows or slide behind crates at the last moment. Ethan was amazed. Her perception of energy was almost like an instinct, but refined and controlled. He realized that she was learning faster than he had anticipated, adapting to human ways of thinking while retaining her alien instincts. They reached a junction where the corridor split in multiple directions. Ethan paused, considering their options. The drones were approaching, and he needed a plan to avoid them completely. He gestured for Lyria to stay close and whispered, "Follow my lead exactly. Trust me." Lyria's small hand found his, gripping it lightly. Ethan felt a surge of determination. He had trained for emergencies, for mechanical failures and disasters, but nothing had prepared him for protecting a being like her. He led her through the narrowest passage he could find, one that even the drone's sensors would struggle to detect. Lyria followed silently, her glowing fingers brushing lightly against the walls as she sensed the energy fields around them. The drones passed without incident, and Ethan allowed himself a quiet sigh of relief. Lyria looked up at him and let out a small trill, almost like a laugh. He smiled faintly, realizing how much courage humans and aliens could share when they trusted each other completely. By evening, they reached an abandoned sector of the colony, a place where old exploration equipment had been stored. It was far from perfect, but it offered a safe space to regroup. Ethan set up a small area with panels, circuits, and a few chairs. Lyria explored cautiously, touching crates and equipment with fascination. She seemed particularly interested in a small generator, her glow pulsing as she sensed its energy. Ethan knelt beside her. "You're learning fast," he said. "Faster than I imagined. But we need to be careful. Someone is looking for you." Her eyes widened slightly and she tilted her head. Ethan realized that while she understood fear, the concept of pursuit was still new. He needed to teach her how to protect herself, how to hide, and how to manipulate her abilities to remain undetected. For the next several hours, they practiced. Lyria learned to dim her glow, to sense approaching energy signatures, and to create small diversions in the circuits of abandoned equipment. Ethan guided her patiently, offering encouragement and corrections. She responded eagerly, her confidence growing with every success. As night fell, Ethan prepared a small sleeping area for Lyria. She curled up, her glow dimming to a soft shimmer while he lay nearby, keeping watch. The quiet of the abandoned sector was comforting, but Ethan knew it was only temporary. The colony's sensors would not remain inactive forever, and the slightest anomaly could trigger an alarm. He thought about the journey ahead. Protecting Lyria would require every skill he had, from engineering and strategy to courage and intuition. But he also knew that their bond was unique. Humans had survived in countless worlds because of their bravery, empathy, and adaptability. Lyria's trust in him was a testament to that strength. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed through the abandoned sector. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He froze, listening carefully. Lyria's glow dimmed as she sensed the same disturbance. Ethan motioned for her to stay quiet. The sound of mechanical feet approached, deliberate and steady. Someone was searching the sector, Ethan whispered. "Hide. Now." They slipped behind a stack of crates, holding their breath as the figure approached. It was a colony security officer, scanning the area with a handheld device designed to detect unusual energy signatures. Ethan's mind raced. One wrong move and they could be discovered. He whispered again. "Stay still. Don't move." Lyria crouched low, her glow fading to near invisibility. Ethan adjusted his own position, using shadows and debris to conceal himself. The officer moved slowly, scanning the area carefully. For several tense minutes, neither Ethan nor Lyria breathed. Then finally, the officer moved on, seemingly unaware of their presence. Ethan let out a quiet sigh of relief. He glanced at Lyria, who looked at him with wide eyes and a small trill that seemed to convey both fear and excitement. He smiled faintly. Somehow, despite the danger, they were still together, still safe. For now. The night passed with little rest. Ethan kept watch while Lyria slept, her small body glowing softly in the darkness. He thought about what they had learned today. Her abilities were growing stronger, and their bond had deepened further. But the dangers were real, and the colony's security would not ignore unusual energy signatures forever. As the first light of morning filtered into the abandoned sector, Ethan allowed himself a moment of reflection. Humans had survived in the galaxy because they adapted, because they protected those who could not protect themselves, and because they had the courage to face the unknown. Lyria's trust in him was proof that humanity's strength could inspire even the most alien of beings. He knew that the next step would be even more dangerous. They could not remain in the colony indefinitely, and moving her to safety would require careful planning, strategy, and courage. But he was ready. Together they had survived their first challenges, avoided detection, and learned to trust each other completely. Somewhere beyond the colony, unseen sensors continued to trace faint energy signatures. Ethan did not yet know who was tracking them, but he understood one thing clearly. The journey was only beginning. Danger awaited, but with courage, ingenuity, and trust they could face it together. Ethan glanced at Lyria as she stirred, her small eyes opening to the new day. She looked at him and he felt a surge of determination. They were partners now, bound by trust and necessity. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and filled with unknown threats, but they would face it together. And as the stars above the colony glimmered faintly, Ethan realized that humanity's The colony was quieter than usual that morning. The usual hum of machinery and chatter subdued as though something in the air had shifted. Ethan sensed it immediately, a tension that ran through the corridors and panels. He knew that their presence was no longer a secret. Someone, somewhere, had noticed the faint energy signatures Lyria left behind. Today they would either escape detection completely or face consequences they could not yet predict. Ethan gently shook Lyria awake. "It's time," he said softly, keeping his voice low. "We have to move before anyone finds us." Lyria's large blue eyes blinked, focusing on him. She tilted her head and let out a small trill. Ethan had learned to interpret these sounds. This one expressed readiness and understanding. She trusted him completely now, and that trust was both a comfort and a responsibility he could not take lightly. They moved quickly through the abandoned sector, using narrow corridors and hidden hatches to stay out of sight. Lyria's glow was dimmed, almost imperceptible, but Ethan could feel her energy, the faint pulse of life that guided them forward. Every turn, every shadow was a calculated step toward safety. As they reached the edge of the colony, Ethan paused. Beyond this point lay open corridors, lightly patrolled but far riskier. He knelt beside Lyria and gestured toward the open path. "We go together," he said firmly. "You follow me exactly. No mistakes." Lyria's small hand found his, gripping tightly. Ethan felt a surge of determination. They had survived so far through trust, cleverness, and courage. Now their bond would be tested in a new way. They slipped into the open corridor, moving swiftly but cautiously. Patrol drones hummed faintly in the distance, scanning energy signatures and life forms. Lyria's senses were attuned to their presence, warning Ethan of each movement before the drones came into view. He marveled at her abilities. Her perception, combined with his knowledge of the colony, made them nearly unstoppable when working together. Suddenly, a sharp alarm blared. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. A drone had detected a minor fluctuation in energy, likely caused by Lyria's faint glow. He glanced at her and she understood immediately. Her small fingers glowed briefly as she manipulated the nearby circuitry, creating a diversion in the power grid. Lights flickered, sensors recalibrated, and the alarm ceased before the drone could identify them. Ethan exhaled quietly. "Good job," he whispered, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. She responded with a trill that sounded almost like pride. Together they continued, more careful now but confident that their coordination could overcome danger. Hours passed as they navigated the outer sectors of the colony. They moved through maintenance tunnels, ventilation shafts, and old exploration routes. Ethan relied on his knowledge of human engineering, while Lyria relied on her alien instincts and energy perception. It was a perfect partnership. By late afternoon, they reached a point where the colony walls ended, revealing the rugged terrain beyond. Mountains and rocky valleys stretched for miles, a natural barrier that humans had long used to protect the settlement. Ethan scanned the area carefully. Here they would be relatively safe, but only if they moved quickly and quietly. "Almost there," he whispered, pointing toward a narrow path between two rocky outcroppings. "Follow me exactly. Stay close." Lyria's hand found his again, her fingers glowing faintly in rhythm with her steps. Together, they moved across the rocky terrain, careful to avoid loose stones that might give away their position. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he remained calm. He knew that panic could be more dangerous than any patrol or sensor. Suddenly, a bright light swept across the valley below. Ethan ducked instinctively, pulling Lyria down behind a large boulder. Drones hovered above, scanning for movement. One of them paused, its sensors picking up a faint energy signature. Lyria's. Ethan's mind raced. He had prepared for this. "Use your energy," he whispered. "Distract them." Lyria's small hands moved over the rocks, her glow pulsing. Sparks of energy leapt from her fingertips, causing a nearby electrical panel to overload. The lights of the drones flickered, sensors recalibrated, and a loud hum echoed through the valley. Ethan watched as the drones momentarily hesitated, confused by the disturbance. It was the opening they needed. "Go," he shouted, and they sprinted across the rocky terrain. Lyria's glow dimmed to nearly invisible, blending with the shadows. Ethan led the way, careful not to make any unnecessary noise. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. They reached a narrow canyon, a natural path that would shield them from most patrols. Ethan paused to catch his breath and looked back. The drones were still searching, but their focus had shifted to the false signal created by Lyria. He smiled faintly. They were still free, for now. As they moved through the canyon, Ethan considered their next steps. Lyria's abilities were extraordinary, but she was still a child. The galaxy was vast, and there were beings who would exploit her powers for their own gain. They needed a place where she could be safe, where she could learn, grow, and trust humans fully. Hours passed, and the sun began to set. The canyon glowed in shades of orange and purple, a stark contrast to the tension of their journey. Lyria moved confidently now, sensing the natural energy in the rocks and soil. She could even manipulate small amounts, lighting their path and keeping them visible only to themselves. Ethan marveled at her growth. She had become not only a companion but a guardian in her own right. Finally, they reached a small plateau, a secluded area with a natural shelter formed by rocks. Ethan knew this would be their temporary refuge. He set up a small area for Lyria to rest and study, using the natural formations to create a safe perimeter. She explored cautiously, touching stones and old soil, sensing the energy around her. "You did well today," Ethan said, sitting beside her. "We faced danger, but we made it together." Lyria looked at him, her blue eyes glowing softly. She trilled in a way that sounded almost like laughter. Ethan smiled. They had survived the day not because of luck, but because of courage, trust, and the unique bond they shared. Humans had always survived in the galaxy through these qualities, and now, Lyria was part of that story. As night fell, Ethan built a small fire using materials from the plateau. The warmth was comforting, and the flickering light reflected off Lyria's silver hair, creating a halo around her small form. She sat quietly, watching the flames, her glow pulsing softly in rhythm with the fire. Ethan thought about the journey ahead. They would face more challenges, more patrols, and perhaps even more dangerous beings. But he also knew that their bond was stronger than any threat. Lyria trusted him completely, and he would protect her with every ounce of strength he had. Humanity had survived in countless worlds because of courage, empathy, and ingenuity, and he would honor that legacy by keeping her safe. Hours passed, and the stars above the plateau shone brightly. Ethan lay back, staring at the night sky. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and full of dangers, but it was also full of wonders. Lyria's presence reminded him of that. She was proof that humanity could inspire trust, even in the most alien of beings, and that courage could overcome fear, no matter how overwhelming. Suddenly, Lyria reached out and touched his arm. Her glow pulsed, and Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. She was not just resting, she was communicating, showing him that she trusted him completely. Ethan smiled faintly, squeezing her small hand. Together they would face whatever came next. Morning came, and Ethan awoke to the sound of birds in the nearby valleys. Lyria was already moving, exploring the plateau with confidence. Her abilities had grown even stronger. She could sense energy flows from deep underground, manipulate small currents in the soil, and even create brief light pulses to signal Ethan without attracting attention. Ethan prepared a small breakfast, and they ate in companionable silence. The calm before the next challenge was a rare moment of peace. He knew that the colony might still be searching for them, but for now they were safe. By mid-morning, Ethan had formulated a plan. They would travel farther from the colony, toward an uncharted region of the planet known for its natural shelters and isolation. It would be difficult terrain, but it offered safety and a chance for Lyria to grow without constant threat. They packed lightly, taking only what they needed. Lyria's energy manipulation allowed them to carry equipment in unconventional ways, lifting small loads without strain. Together they moved toward the new destination, navigating valleys, rivers, and rocky outcroppings. Along the way, Lyria demonstrated her growing abilities. She could detect hidden streams, sense unstable rocks, and even predict minor weather changes. Ethan was amazed. Her perception of the world was beyond anything human, yet she trusted him completely to guide their path. Days passed as they traveled, facing natural obstacles and occasional patrols from the colony. Lyria's skills continued to impress, and their bond deepened further. Ethan realized that humanity's strength lay not just in survival, but in its ability to inspire trust, courage, and connection. Lyria's trust in him was proof of that. Finally, they reached a secluded valley hidden from view and rich in natural resources. Ethan knew this would be their new home, a place where Lyria could be safe and learn more about humanity and the universe. Together, they began building a small shelter, using natural formations and scavenged materials from the journey.